welcome back. I'm here for another video to teach you guys. These are just kind of random. You don't really have to follow these in any particular order, but I'm going to be remaking one of my old tutorials from like what feels like 2 years ago, and it might as well be 2 years ago. But this one is how to draw wings. Now, a lot of people, that's one thing people struggle with, especially, at least I see a lot, because if you're inexperienced, your wings will look something like this. If you're somewhat experienced, your wings will look a little like this. And none of them are correct, so I'm going to teach you how to do them anatomically correct. Now, when making a wing shape, I'm just going to kind of teach a basic shape, not really anything too dynamic yet. But when making a wing, it's important to have a skeleton for it. And I'm going to be using simple shapes because that's how I like to teach. Simple shapes, even though I don't use them. Now, the basic wing has typically three shapes in it. It's got the arm, the forearm, the forearm, and then the arc. And you could look at any bird, you'll notice this kind of shape, you just gotta make it nice and healthy arc. Nothing too straight or jagged, and that's your first part of it. This is how you start, with this basic little slope. So, right here around the kind of interception, I'm gonna mark these with little blue dots. That way you could see them better. In these kind of intersections, you want to kind of spread off from it in these little sections. This section's gonna be your longest, and this is gonna be your biggest section. Notice that. This is gonna be your biggest section. You kinda don't fill this in, by the way. This is all done lightly with pencil. This is your lightest section. This goes into kinda like the body, and this part is kinda just, you leave it alone. You leave this part alone. So this is your basic wing shape. You got this giant, very big, very dominating part, and this is kind of where you want to put a lot of your detail. And right here, it's kind of connected to the body, so you don't really need too much detail there. But this is kind of what you want to start off with now. I'm going to shrink this down to show you, and also lighten it. So next what you want to do is the wing itself is separated into sections of sections. So what I mean by that is there's the actual arm part of the wing, and then there's the feather regions, which overlap over the other. So there's three sections typically. So I'm going to get into the first section, which is this part right here, the arm. So we're going to start with the arm shape, and you kind of just, floof it up because they're feathers. They're very short feathers. And you kind of just follow the shape mostly, and then you stop here and kind of just make it dissipate like this. Just kind of make this little I don't know what shape this would be, but kind of just make it dissipate. And then here, you kind of start halfway sort of in the middle, around the middle, and you just kind of you do this little floof part, and then also kind of make it just fade. You want to make it connect into here, not just make it like this, not separate it too much, just try and blend it. I guess that could be a word you could use. Try to blend it, add whatever details you want. Maybe you want to hook on it, maybe you just want to leave it blend. Now on to the next layer, which is the most important. What makes a wing look like a wing is this section right here. What you want to do is add very sharp looking feathers at the end of it. And all birds have this, at least the ones I see. Add very sharp feathers. I would suggest adding 5 or 4 or 6, maybe even. Between that number of sharp feathers, these are the largest feathers. This is where the largest feathers are located. On this part of the wing, right here. So if you want to add little sections here that are colored, maybe you want to add another little row. Doesn't matter. I wouldn't suggest adding a second row. I just kind of keep it like this, and then you blend it into this section right here that I'm about to do. Now this section, it has two, you kind of got to separate it, not really by half, more make it uneven. Don't make it a half separation though. I would suggest kind of going a little over half with feathers. So make your wing, make your feathers, your little clusters of feathers, and then add little details to give it the illusion of multiple feathers. And like that, we could just kind of lead into this section, which is just literally the same thing. Maybe rougher, fluffier, whatever. And there you go. There's your wing. Maybe make it go in a little because wings do go in. Make it go out, connect to whatever, and there you go. There's your wing. Now let me get rid of the line so you can see it. Just like that, you've got your wing. Your feathered wing, at least. Because, in my opinion, the bat wing is a lot easier to make. I mean, obviously that's very lazily done, but I'll teach that too. This will be a kind of 2-on-2. So you got your wing right here, and then like if you want to make it dynamic, you just kind of do the same thing with morph the shapes. So that's our first wing done. We got rid of that, or well, we put it away. Oh my god. Now onto the more kind of bat or dragonish wing or demon wing, whatever you want to call it. So same structure. You know, you got that little 3-shape arc, except this is more like say drawing a hand. So you kind of got to add another here and another here. So this here is the finger, like the thumb portion of it, and right here is the other kind of flap of the patagium, which is this part. This is the patagium. Now you could just leave it here, you're done. You could very well just do that, have a pterodactyl wing. There you go. But I'm gonna teach you how to have it with multiple, like these kinds of limbs. Now when making an arc like this, you keep the same arc, and you kind of just do the same thing. See how I have the same kind of interceptions? Except the sections are gonna be cut from these 3 shapes. The 3 shapes that I had. We're gonna ignore this part normally and turn it into kind of this. Gonna bend it a little. So with this, you have your thumb and then your fingers. Now, for simplicity reasons, I'm gonna just make them go out like this from the center. But in actuality, it's kind of like an actual hand connected to everything. But for simplicity, and yeah, just basically that, I'm gonna make it go from the center part like that. I'd suggest having the middle one be the longest one because, you know, that's how the middle finger works. Now typically you'd have 4, but for this example I'm going to use 3 just to make it a little easier. Now from here you got your shape and it's already looking like it. And now you think connect these, right? And there you go. And you could just connect them. That would save like quite a bit of time, and there you go, tutorial done. But I'm going to go a little more in depth into this. So I'm going to take this onto a different layer. And I'm going to actually do that same trick. So here you have your limb. Now usually this would be a lot bigger, but because this is really tiny, this is actually small for standards, for these kinds of wing standards, so I'd actually suggest making this a lot bigger. But for the example, these are going to be small boy wings. So small bat wings. So you go from here and you do your little limb, like the first part of the limb. And after that you go here, and then with this part is where it gets a little tricky. So here I would suggest erasing a little bit and kind of merging these. And there you go, you kind of get that more of like a hand feel. Now try not to make them too skinny or too bulky, just like the right amount, like about here. And there you go, you kind of just merge the joints like an actual skeleton would work. Because what we did under here is just the skeleton. It's not actually the wing. And just like that, you know, you kind of roughly have your wing. Now you could add this little like thumb area, like this little, if you look at your thumb, you'd notice you'd have this kind of shape. You could add that, whatever you want, and then you could start connecting it. You go like that, and then outwards. I suggest going outwards because this is actually how a wing will connect. It'll connect outwards towards the lower part of the hip. And there you go, and then you gotta add this little. So that's kind of how you do the patagium, which again, a reminder, is the name of this thing right here. This flesh. That's how you do the patagium. And this is kind of just a very basic rundown on how you do a bat wing. And that's about it for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. You know, you can now do sideways profiles with these kinds of wings. You know, you just kind of have this and just kind of duplicate it over. Just flip it over. So that concludes this tutorial. I'm just going to line these up for kind of showcase. Anyways, that concludes this video. It was a short one. I mean, at least I think it's a short one. I'm probably lying. If you enjoyed, you know, I'm teaching y'all for free, so consider subscribing. And that'll be all. Goodbye.